Greetings, good afternoon, good evening, Black Liberation Media and Rootwork audience. My name is Tandasizwe Shimaringa. This is Rootwork on Black Liberation Media, coming to you on a Monday. I used to come on Thursdays, but life be lifing. So for the last few times, I've been coming on Mondays, except for Tuesday, when I do work with Cooperation Jackson and their Build and Fight Formula series. I'm coming on here today, though, because I was scheduled to do this show last week, Harriet Tubman, Fact, Fiction, or Other, but then so much went down in the streets with ICE and protests here in Los Angeles. Said we need to talk about this issue because Black folks in LA in particular are feeling some kind of way about what's happening. So even though I don't agree with a lot of what Black people in LA and elsewhere are saying right now, I had to give voice to it. I couldn't just ignore it or dismiss it. It's my job as a journalist for my people to give voice, but also to provide context, analysis, and information where possible. So I had to do that show last week. So coming here today to talk about Harriet Tubman, Fact, Fiction, or something else. Before we get into that, got to do the housekeeping. Please like, share, and subscribe. I ask y'all to like the video first before you forget or before you hear something that pisses you off and you decide you really didn't like the video. But at any rate, like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe, share, like Black Liberation Media and to Rootwork. Subscribe to both of the channels, please. It's free. It don't cost you nothing. I'm not going to be emailing you. You'll get a notification when a show is coming on and when it's live. Just help a sister get her numbers up. Help Black Liberation Media and help a sister get their numbers up. And if you're already a subscriber, please share this video. That ain't gonna cost you nothing either. That's just gonna be a little bit of energy, finger energy. Share the link. That's all I ask. Like, share, and subscribe. All right. Greetings to you, Terry, peace. Oh, that reminds me. Real quick, a shout out to Glenn, shout out to Tara, shout out to Leah, and shout out to Joe, who have kindly, graciously supported the work I'm doing here on Rootwork. You can do that too, because at the bottom, there's the Patreon link for Black Liberation Media. There's also my Cash App and my Venmo. So if you're feeling charitable, help a sister out, hook a sister up. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Joe. All right. So today, Harriet Tubman, Fact, Fiction, or Other. Let me give you the background real quick. There are people, I've mentioned them before, but I've alluded to them before, but I never mentioned their names. I don't want to give their names, but I might have to do it today. But there are people that are involved in misinformation and disinformation of our history out here in these internet streets And one of the things they've been saying is that the Underground Railroad was some actual train tracks underground. And that Nat Turner was not a real person. Harriet Tubman was not a real person. So they've been doing this for a minute. But what I found out a couple of weeks ago was that a sister had done this video stating she had just found out that Harriet Tubman was not a real person. And it went viral. It went viral on the one hand because so many of us could not believe it. And it went viral because so many people did believe it. I came across it. One of the people, I'm trying to give you context because I believe in background and context. One of the people that I follow on Instagram posted a stitch or response video to that original video. The person who did this stitch video is named Bob the Drag Queen. I did not stutter. You heard that correctly. Bob the Drag Queen. Now, let me tell you how I know Bob. I know who RuPaul is. Everybody knows who RuPaul is. But I've never watched RuPaul's Drag Race. I'm not interested in that. But when I'm not monitoring media for research purposes, I spend my time. One of the things I look at is comedy. I believe laughter is essential to the soul. It brings me joy. I like to laugh. I like good comedians. Bob the Drag Queen, in addition to being a drag queen who won on RuPaul's Drag Race, is also a comedian. That's how I know Bob. So this other person on Instagram posts Bob the Drag Queen's stitch response to this video. And I was like, somebody actually did a video? Wait a minute. So I ran over to TikTok where the original video was. And in my haste and in my reactionary anger, I did not download the original video. What I did do was left a very, very unnice comment, which was subsequently flagged and removed because it violated the community guidelines. I've since tried to go back and find the video, and it's been deleted, I believe because the person made an apology video. So I'll show you that also. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you this one video because it contains parts of the original video. I don't know the woman's name, but it's her handle is C Chronicles or CC Chronicles on TikTok. So I'm going to show you this video, which also has elements from other people. I'm going to show you that video first. Then we're going to show you Bob the Drag Queen's video. But let's do this one first.
Tubman is not a real.
Hold on.
Ever since I found out Harriet Tubman is not a real person, it fucked me up. I'm not gonna lie. Because her real name is Araminta Ross. And she was a spy for the United States government. Her real name, Araminta, is not connected to the Harriet Tubman. And Sojourner Truth's real name is Isabella Bumfrey. Same thing, was also a spy.
I just was saying this the other day to someone. Hear me out. That shit does not make any sense. Why would you be taking slaves underground and Tubman?
Martin Luther King is not the only one that needs to be exposed. We need to talk about Harriet Tubman in the vital role that she played, because I don't think y'all realize that gap that we're missing. Harriet Tubman helped cover that up. Let me break this shit down to y'all. So first of all, if y'all don't know, Harriet Tubman was not her name. And y'all, I keep telling y'all, America is a stage. These people are playing characters. Everybody, for some odd reason, has to change their name.
Yeah, so that person stitched together these other videos. Her response was to leave the room. That's a good response. My response was to go leave unpleasant comments and get them flagged by TikTok for the community guidelines. I left my mic open. I don't know if y'all heard me laughing a minute ago. It's because when I saw your quote, when I saw what you wrote, Leah, with the exclamation mark. Ooh, yes, absolutely, Jesus Christ. Jesus H. Christ, sweet baby black Jesus laying in the manger, my God. And yes, James, this is the result of ADOS, FBA. You put BS. Bullshit. You can say it here on Black Liberation Media. Whew, Lord have mercy. So yeah, I had to run over there because I was like, nigga, what? Excuse my language. Okay, so now I'm going to play Bob the Drag Queen's Stitch response. Bob was so much more tactful and patient than I would have been, than I probably could be. But I want you to see this. And some of the, I believe he shows that other light-skinned girl, but some people had, I guess, typed comments. So he's responding to all of this. Let's go to that.
It's not a real. Ever since I found out Harriet Tubman is not a real person, it fucked me up. I'm not gonna lie.
I decided to just hop in here real quick because this video is not for the lady who made this, because I think she's made her mind up that Harriet Tubman is like a fairy tale creature. But I do want to discuss the issues for someone, because I see a lot of the comments are like, "Oh my God, I knew it." Like this comment really gagged me. So let's unpack it.
Because her real name is Araminta Ross.
Yeah, she was born Araminta Ross. But people change their names all the time, right? Like, we know this. So when you get to freedom, you want to change your name because they're often looking for enslaved people by their names, and you can't go and say your name is the same name that it was when you were an enslaved person, or they might find you. So she took her husband's last name, Tubman, and her mother's name, Harriet, and created the name Harriet Tubman.
And she was a spy for the United States government.
This part is true. Harriet Tubman was a spy for the U.S. government, but I think you're making it seem more sinister than it actually is. So Harriet Tubman worked for the Union, the North, to help free enslaved people in the South, because remember, the United States was too low-key to governments at the time. So she led a mission called the Combahee River Raid, which freed, historians are estimating, somewhere between 500 and 800 people in one night while raiding 3 different plantations, and offering the enslaved people an opportunity to join her and go to the next place to fight for the freedom of their brothers and their sisters and their fellow enslaved people. So yes, she was a spy for the U.S. military, but not the way she's making it sound. So when the slaves were being freed, it was never because Abraham Lincoln was an abolitionist. He was not. It was done just to cripple the South, because they were using free labor, slave labor, to build their economy. So to be clear, the United States, the North, Abraham Lincoln, they were not like, we are just so anti-slavery. They just wanted to cripple the South and make them lose the war.
And they want us to look up and idolize these people. Oh, well, they look just like me, so I must look up to them. Stop that shit immediately.
Black Americans have every right to question the U.S. government. I firmly believe that, considering all they've done to us, the lies they've told us. That being said, everything's not a trick. There have been a lot of tricks. Everything isn't a trick. Now I'm looking at the comments, right? Like this comment I mentioned earlier. Harriet Tubman has descendants. Harriet Tubman didn't have children, but Harriet Tubman does have living relatives. They've written books. This is a book by one of her living descendants, or one of her living relatives. So Harriet Tubman absolutely has very living relatives. And now I'm looking at videos like this one.
Finally, someone's talking about it, because I just was saying this the other day to someone. Hear me out. That shit does not make any sense. Why would you be taking slaves underground in tunnels?
The Underground Railroad was not under the ground. It wasn't sub-earth. It wasn't below the earth. It was underground, like it was a secret. You know, that was how it was underground. But it was they're not tunnels going from Maryland to Canada. There is a YouTuber named FD Signifier who I I strongly recommend you watch his videos. He's great. But he's coined this term called pseudo-intellectual Negro nonsense. And that's what this is. Now, I want to be clear. I am not an intellectual. I am not a historian. I'm a history buff. I like history. I am not, specifically surrounding Harriet Tubman specifically. I am not a historian. I really strongly urge you, if you're going to listen to someone, listen to actual historians who studied history. Harriet Tubman is a very well documented person, a very well documented real person who lived and helped a lot of people. I hope this helps.
Shout out to FD Signifier and shout out to Bob the Drag Queen. That took some patience, but also he was not condescending in any way, because y'all about to see me be condescending in about 2 or 3 more minutes. So after all of that madness, obviously, folks got on her, whoever this chick is. All right, I shouldn't call her a chick. Whoever this person is. And she made an apology video. I'm going to play that for you now. I'm going to play it in its entirety. And then we're going to go into it.
Hey y'all, so I had made a video 2 weeks ago that is going viral because I had said that I found out Harriet Tubman was not a real person. So I want to first say that as a grown woman, it's my responsibility to call myself out on the very same platform that I ran my mouth. And y'all's feelings are valid, your frustration, your anger, because honestly, as a Black American, I should have been more responsible with what the fuck I said, because I understand that when you are a Black freedom fighter, it takes everything that you've got to even have the courage to stand the fuck. And as someone who too revolts against the same system that has enslaved Black Americans, I deeply and honestly, really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, did not mean to disrespect any sort of Black leaders of any kind. And I sincerely mean it. What I wanted to say is the version from textbooks that we were given in our classrooms and the same government that once enslaved Black Americans, I have a right to question the education that they teach us. And I'm very weary and I'm very sensitive about what information I am learning. And my anger was inappropriately misdirected to the wrong person. My anger and frustrations were not on Harriet Tubman, and it should have been, or what I wanted to say is my frustration is towards the people who hold the pen and who leaves out truths, and it frustrates me. And honestly, like I said, I should have been more careful with my words, and I also should have been more clear and gone deeper with what I meant instead of just dropping it at. I had to come on here and say something and make it right, because I would feel really bad about leaving people off and not at least apologizing for what I said and the confusion that it had made. Okay. So to everyone who saw me run my mouth in the first clip, I really do apologize for my behavior, the way that I came across, okay? And this is something that I'm learning right now, is that, are you really thinking about what you're saying? And in the past, I had not. I just said shit without really thinking about it, and that's immature of me. I'm learning as I go. Take time to think about what you're saying. So I do want to apologize again for any confusion and disrespect that. So thank you for hearing me out, y'all. Appreciate it. Hey, y'all.
Okay. That was her apology in full. Now let's go over this real quick.
Hey y'all, so I had made a video 2 weeks ago that is going viral because I had said that I found out Harriet Tubman was not a real person. So I want to first say that as a grown woman, it's my responsibility to call myself out on the very same platform that I ran my mouth. And y'all's feelings are valid, your frustration, your anger, because honestly, as a Black American, I should have been more responsible with what the fuck I said, because I understand that when you are a Black freedom fighter, it takes everything that you've got to even have the courage to stand the fuck. And as someone who too revolts against the same system that has enslaved Black Americans, I deeply and honestly, really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, did not mean to disrespect any sort of black.
Is that who you are? Someone revolting against the system? Are you comparing yourself to black freedom fighters? Really?
Leaders of any kind. And I sincerely mean it. What I wanted to say is the version from textbooks that we were given in our classrooms and the same government that once enslaved Black Americans, I have a right to question the education that they teach us.
You absolutely have the right to question the education that our people are taught. I wish more people would question the education they have been taught. But that's not what you said. You said Harriet Tubman was not a real person.
And I'm very weary and I'm very sensitive about what information I am learning. And my anger was inappropriately misdirected to the wrong person. My anger and frustrations were not on Harriet Tubman, and it should have been, or what I wanted to say is my frustration is towards the people who hold the pen and who leaves out truths, and it frustrates me. And honestly, like I said, I should have been more careful with my words.
People leave out truths all the time, which is why you study and you do collective study and you talk with people and you go and read some books written by reputable people. How do you know they're reputable? We can do a whole show on that. My point being is you didn't do none of that. There have been, as Bob the Drag Queen said, Harriet Tubman is very well documented. All you had to do was look that up. But that's not what you did, and that's not what you said.
And I also should have been more clear and gone deeper with what I meant instead of just dropping it at.
Oh, don't go no deeper. You should have said what you meant, which you did not say.
I had to come on here and say something and make it right, because I would feel really bad about leaving people off and not at least apologizing for what I said and the confusion that it had made. Okay. So to everyone who saw me run my mouth in the first clip, I really do apologize for my behavior, the way that I came across, okay? And this is something that I'm learning right now, is that, are you really thinking about what you're saying? And in the past, I had not. I just said shit without really thinking about it. And that's immature of me. I'm learning as I go. Take time to think about what you're saying. So I do want to apologize again for any confusion and disrespect that. So thank you for hearing me out, y'all. Appreciate it. Hey, y'all.
Confusion it caused. No, you caused. Confusion you caused with the video where you said Harriet Tubman was not a real person. I never heard an apology for I said she was not a real person and I should not have. I didn't hear that. I heard a lot of jib jabbing. I didn't hear that part. Be that as it may, this is her apology video. And somebody, the reason I know this exists is because somebody else, as I was looking for the original video, somebody else said, oh, she made an apology video. But that person was also like, now that she's apologized, all of y'all should apologize for calling her names. No, absolutely not. She should have been called every last one of those names. She probably still should be called every last one of those names. Not sorry. Absolutely not. Y'all, they said what they said. I said what I said. You want me to say it again? What you say, Zen? See, what had happened was you got on the mic and ran your mouth and you didn't know what you was talking about. I mean, you just didn't admitted it, not alluded to it. You admitted to it in your video. That's what had happened. What had happened was you ran your mouth and you did not know what you was talking about. Now, this is entitled Harriet Tubman Fact, Fiction, or Other. I'm going to get into the other in a minute with my guest, Jessica Iwuyor. Jessica Ann Mitchell, i.e. Jam, Iwuyor. Real quick, let me let y'all know. Jessica Ann Mitchell, Iwuyor, Jam, is a reparationist and multicultural communications specialist based in the Washington, D.C. area. She is the founder of the National Black Cultural Information Trust Incorporated, NBCI, which shares cultural information, stories, and resources that uplift the collective freedom of Black communities while correcting cultural misinformation. This is a very good interview that I had with Jessica. It's an interview pre-recorded, it's not live, where we talked about misinformation and disinformation. In addition to her work with national organizations and firms, she serves as the communications chair for the Pan-African Congress North American Delegation. She's also a member of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America and a member of the Case for Reparations Advisory Committee, an initiative of Liberated Capital's Decolonizing Wealth Fund. Now, before I get to this interview with Jessica, I want to do my part in correcting misinformation and disinformation. It wasn't until I saw this video that I realized that I might be adding to that. I was like, who, how? Okay, but let me tell you what I'm talking about. This is a photograph of Harriet Tubman. I don't have the date of it, but Harriet Tubman passed in 1913. It's safe to assume that this is from the early 1900s. I don't have the date. I don't have the person who took the photograph, but it has been stated numerous times that this is Harriet Tubman. Now, this photograph, this is a Photoshop of Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was not smiling. The reason why I love this photograph and have used it and have distributed it, have posted it, is because this photograph came about after the, what did we call it? I forget what we called it. The fade in the water. What happened in Montgomery, Alabama in August, if not last year, the year before. They calling it the fade in the water, where that riverboat captain was attacked by some white folks and folks on the riverfront, and one brother from the riverboat swam across to his aid and was lighting white folks up. The name of that riverboat was the Harriet II. It's spelled Harriott, Harriet II. So it's not the same spelling, but it's Harriet. It was Black folks fighting back, and someone put out this photograph of the ancestor Harriet Tubman smiling, being pleased about Black folks fighting back. That's how I interpreted it. I laughed as soon as I saw it. I was like, absolutely, absolutely, yes. I've put that photo out before. After old girl did her video, I understand now there are probably going to be people who think this is an actual photograph of Harriet Tubman. Now, a few weeks ago, a plantation in Louisiana burned down. I forget the name of that plantation. It just mysteriously burned down. And so many folks in the digital world were saying, oh, it's the work of the ancestors. It's the work of the ancestors. It may have been, it may not have been. I don't particularly care. I'm just glad it burned down. But this photograph surfaced after that incident happened. A different one of Harriet Tubman smiling and of Frederick Douglass smiling. The photographs I've seen of Frederick Douglass, I don't think he's ever smiled. But as you can see, this is in the background a plantation burning. Once again, I'm interpreting whoever created this as making the statement of ancestors are pleased. And as opposed to some nameless, faceless ancestors, they use two of the most well-known ancestors, most well-known, of course they're not the only ones, most well-known ancestors we know of fighting against enslavement, Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. So, no, this is not an actual photograph of Harriet and Frederick. I have used it, I have put it out because, again, that was my interpretation of the person who did it. But I understand there's some folk out there who ain't gonna get it like that. They might think this is an actual photograph. No, it is not. So, depending on how I feel and Mr. and Mrs. Arthritis, I might talk some more about intelligence later on. But what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go to this interview, this conversation I had with Jessica Iwuyor, and we're gonna talk about not only the fiction, but why this might be occurring at this time. Here with me now to speak about this is Jessica Iwuyor, also known as Jam. Jessica, thank you so much for being on Rootwork today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, as I was saying in my introduction, it was because of my exposure to you and your work that made me see that this is not just a fluke. This is not just ignorant run amok, but this might be part of an actual targeted, for lack of a better word, operation going on. Why don't you tell our audience why that is or why that might be?
Okay, sure. So just to back up a little bit, we're talking about cultural misinformation. So over the last few years, misinformation, disinformation became like these really big kind of buzzwords. And what was happening is in digital spaces, people were being exposed to a number of different types of false information. So there's misinformation, which is like when somebody is spreading false information, but they don't mean to. Like they don't know that they're spreading false information. Like you might have misheard something, misread something, and you tell somebody else, and then they believe it. That's misinformation. But then disinformation is when someone knows that something is false. They know that something is false, and they spread it with the specific purpose of confusing people or persuading people to act in a certain way or manner that they will benefit from. And then there's a third one, which is malinformation, which is spreading what is factual information, but in a way that is meant to trigger someone to act in a specific manner that may or may not be to their benefit. In the case of Black communities, some people call it like racialized disinformation. I call it cultural disinformation. But either way, there are bad actors in digital spaces that are purposely spreading false information within predominantly Black digital spaces. So this takes place on a number across all of the different major social media platforms. It's on X, which used to be Twitter. And we see it like it was really bad in 2020 and so on. But like now all the guardrails are off because before social media companies were at least on some level trying to figure out a way to lessen the harm of disinformation on their platforms or prevent the spread. So it's on Twitter, X, it's on Meta platforms like Instagram and Facebook. It's all over TikTok, as you saw. It's really bad also in Clubhouse. If anybody is still using that, like, oh God.
I had to get up out of Clubhouse, but yeah.
Oh yeah. But so cultural misinformation or disinformation is like the strategic targeting of Black communities by using like cultural history or anything that has to do with like our cultural understanding to fuse in disinformation. And so what was happening in 2020 was fusing in disinformation with reparations and with the election. And then there was mis and disinformation about healthcare, mis and disinformation about different laws that were coming out. And then there's consistent like mis and disinformation currently about the transatlantic slave trade. And that may be surprising for people to hear, but first of all, most rigorous Black history is not taught to the masses and readily available to the masses. And a lot of things, you know, people generally know, but it's not something that like you don't get like a deep, in-depth lesson on the transatlantic slave trade in the public school system. Right. Or many private schools don't teach it. So because we've already, like Dr. Carter G. Woodson said, we've experienced this miseducation of the Negro. We're in this age now where we're experiencing the misinformation of the Negro. And so there are entities that take advantage of those educational gaps and the access and the resources to information to plant these seeds that have been sprouting in different digital spaces. And one of them has been transatlantic slave trade denialism. So different components of that would be that people that push that rhetoric would say things like, oh, it never happened, or Black Americans never came from Africa, or and they will use certain text to sometimes real text to misinform. It's real text that's used out of context. Like, for example, they came before Columbus. But like the folks that would use that book would not acknowledge where they came from. Like if you are to believe the book itself, which, you know, there's contentions around they came before Columbus, but even if you were just to believe the core thought process behind it, they came from where? Africa. But people would use that book as a text to say we didn't come from Africa, or that we were the original indigenous peoples to the Americas, or
right. I'm familiar with that rule.
Yeah, or the transatlantic slave trade happened in reverse, or they're trying to trick us out of our, you know, they, like the government, is trying to trick us out of our birthright by making us believe we came from Africa, which really wouldn't really make any sense. But there are people that believe these things for a number of different reasons. Number one, many people are just misinformed, you know, and so our communities are vulnerable to, you know, different types of information. If you just don't have a really strong grasp on Black history, and you've never had that access on a continuous basis to know Black history, then it's something that you could be vulnerable to. Another thing that we're dealing with is internalized anti-Blackness, where there's some people that just don't want to be associated with Black as a race, or having African ancestry. So these types of disinformation is an out for them to be able to cling to something to say, see, I knew I wasn't African, or I knew I didn't come from Africa, or I had no African ancestry. And so, like, who is spreading these things?
Well,
right?
Hold on. Because I wanted to, well, so I'm seeing online such an increased usage of the term Black American, at the same time a disdain for African American, to the point where it's unsettling. But here's what I wanted to get to. I'm familiar with the transatlantic slave trade denialism crew. Let's leapfrog to enslavement and Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner not being real. Because as I said, you are the first person to put it in my mind that there's a deliberateness to this. And you just talked about this. But the question is, why is there a deliberate effort? Why
Yeah.
is there a deliberate effort of all of these things, as well as saying neither Nat Turner nor Harriet Tubman were actual people? What is
Well,
that
it's
about?
all, yeah, it's all interconnected. If
Mhm.
you have a group of people that are spreading disinformation, or an entity spreading disinformation that
Mhm.
we never came from Africa, or that
Mhm.
we were never slaves or enslaved, then of course then you would attack the freedom fighters that helped to free us from enslavement, because that's part of the overarching narrative of our history as a people that were formerly enslaved. So if you're saying, if a person is to say that the transatlantic slave trade never happened, then the next point of entry is those key historical figures that fought against slavery and the slave trade didn't exist.
Did not exist.
Yeah, and so then they sow these seeds to.
And along with that, it makes no sense to have an actual railroad under the ground.
So
And
they,
would that also fit into this?
well, I mean, for them, the thought process is to just disengage from the African ancestry and enslavement period as a
Mhm.
part of who we are,
Right.
as a
But I
part
know,
of
but you were
our.
saying, but you were saying how this ties into an attack on our rights as
It
Black folks.
does. It does.
Mhm.
So when we think of people like Harriet Tubman and Nat Turner and all of these different Black historical figures that lived during the period of enslavement, um,
Mhm.
what happened right after slavery ended? We had a series of different amendments that took place in the United States to make African American citizens, to make us have the right to vote, or at least men in the beginning. So a number of different things occurred following our emancipation.
Mhm.
So right now we're in this. Let me back up a little bit. In 2020, one of the main things that was being kind of thrown out there in the digital space was trying to deter Black people from voting. Now, we
Mhm.
already have our own internal arguments over voting, whether or not we should vote, whether or not it's effective. All of those are valid conversations. But what is happening when we have these conversations in the digital spaces, other people and entities are listening to our conversations and are using it to their benefit to try to manipulate us one way or the other.
Mhm.
So there were many different entities trying to deter African Americans from voting consistently in 2020 and 2024. And there have been like actual breakdowns of very intense targeted campaigns to make us feel like it's useless to vote, to
Mhm.
basically make us uh, give up on the entire process. Now what we're dealing with is even more intense.
Mhm.
We have an administration that is trying to make America white again. There's already been several calculations about what America is going to look like in 2030 and 2050, where white people would become something like a majority minority. Like they
Yeah.
would still
Yeah.
have some of the biggest population, but they wouldn't be the nation would still be overwhelmingly people of color.
Mhm.
It would just be the largest minority, majority minority, whatever you call it.
Which is the most ridiculous term I've ever heard in my life. But okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
So basically, they would be like the largest racial group, but they wouldn't be like a single racial group, but they wouldn't be the largest in terms of if all people of color, if Black and brown people, and Asian people, and all these different groups come together, then we would overwhelmingly represent the electorate of the United States of America.
Mhm.
So white people would no longer be the majority. And
Mhm.
so what has been happening, like with Project 2025, with the Tanton Network, which I can explain, there was a man named John Tanton that was trying to keep America as white as possible. Um, they have been these crackdowns with ICE and all these different things and cutting off visas from certain countries is specifically made to decrease the growth of Black and brown populations in the United States. And then what's also being discussed is where we fit in as African Americans. Because some people feel that we're safe. We don't have to worry about ICE. We don't have to worry about any of these things because we come from enslaved peoples that were enslaved here. You know, I'm a citizen. I'm safe. At the same time, the Trump administration has been rethinking and revisualizing what those various amendments actually mean. And so they've been talking about the 14th Amendment, and they've been talking about what citizenship is. And there have been conversations about whether or not we qualify as citizens. And there have been conversations about, well, how could you possibly deport U.S. citizens, hypothetically? And then, so there's been conversations from that administration about possibly moving U.S. prison population to another country, and who is hyper targeted by the police in this country? African Americans. So if we are to forget our own Moses, like Harriet Tubman, and if we are to forget the existence of Nat Turner, and if we are to forget the enslavement period in America and the amendments that came along with those, we are essentially allowing the erasure of a very critical time period in which our ancestors, you know, whether we feel like it went far enough or not, gained several rights in this nation as citizens. And so if we are to disbelieve or consider some of our ancestors make believe, we're erasing that entire period where we are no longer understanding our own civil and human rights in this nation based off of the experiences that we've went through with the people. And so that's how you can get people that are so naive going, I'm safe. ICE, it doesn't, I'm gonna stay home. You know, ICE don't bother me. ICE don't have
nothing. It's not our fight.
Exactly. It's not our fight. Mm-hmm. Well, the reality is, as people who fought against and endured chattel slavery, every battle on this land that is concerning citizenship, that is concerning representation, that is concerning freedom of speech, and so on and so on, that is a core struggle that we're always going to be engaged in, whether we like some of the other adjacent ethnicities or racial groups or not. It's always going to have an impact on us. And so these disinformation campaigns deal with several themes. One of the themes is getting us to forget our history, and in conjunction with forgetting our history, forgetting the struggle that came along with that to get us to where we came to today. And then if you forget that struggle, you forget the rights and the liberties that came with it. And then you forget like how vulnerable you actually are as a population. And then now we're dealing with a whole bunch of issues where people really believe or think that ICE doesn't impact them, that it has no effect on them, that the changes to different visas have no effect on our communities, that the different expansions of the police state that are attacking immigrants has nothing to do with us. Before you know it, this administration could come up with an entire plan for minimizing the Black and brown population. And in different pockets of that, it is going to include us.
So any fight for human rights, we should be concerned about, of course. Yeah. And we've said that as a Black people, we've said that, but not only ICE is our fight, not because of humanity, not because of solidarity, not because of mutual understanding, shared mutual oppression, not because they could be coming for us. They've been coming for us, as some of us have been saying, but they've been coming for us. And this is absolutely a nefarious attempt at erasing our rights, an absolute attempt, an absolutely deliberate attempt with all of this talk about birthright citizenship. I'm
Yes.
not quite sure why. Again, I guess it's because of the misinformation and disinformation. Why would you think the discussion of birthright citizenship is only for these people over here and not eventually going to come to you, black American, black person? Why would you think? But then again, you're probably not thinking because that's why you think Harriet Tubman didn't exist or that she's
Yeah.
not. Yeah. So I had been reacting to this just from a very reactionary place. I'm so glad I came across you so that you could help me put it into this perspective because I get lost sometimes. I move quick. I don't always. Anyway, I'm like, wait, what the hell? What the hell are you? I don't stop and think. Wait a minute. What's behind this? I'm usually my first response is, what the hell are you doing? So I'm speaking with Jessica Iwuyor, also known as Jam for short, who I first came across on that hellscape known as Twitter, fighting the good fight against ADOS and FBA, my sister. I thank you so much because I couldn't take one for the team. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But you've been doing this work in digital spaces for a while. Before we continue on with this conversation, let our audience know about the organization, the work that you are doing.
Sure. So my organization's name is the National Black Cultural Information Trust, and we share news, information, and resources for the collective freedom of Black communities. If you go to our website, nbcit.org, we have a newsletter that you can sign up for. We also have different blog posts and resources and information for people to learn about disinformation, for people to learn about reparations, for people to learn about Black voter suppression. And cultural heritage and education about that. We actually did a series debunking myths about Black history called the Fake Black History series. So all of that stuff is on our website.
So as I was just saying, I first came across you fighting the good fight against FBA, ADOS, and whatever bots was over there on Twitter. But you mentioned something a few minutes ago, John Tanton. John Tanton. I'm not sure is he still alive or not. I thought I read
he's dead.
But either before he passed or his people are buddy with Yvette Carnell, one of the co-founders of ADOS. Is that correct?
She was on the board of one of the groups that is considered a part of the Tanton network. Mm-hmm. So John Tanton, he comes out of, I'm not sure if it's what they call it, eco-nationalist, eco-racist, but he comes out of this this camp of people that were like concerned about the environment and all of these different things, and were a part of these different environmental groups. And then at some point he started funding organizations that were meant to preserve the whiteness of America. And he is kind of like, they call it the Tanton Network. Southern Poverty Law Center has a lot of information about this. But the Tanton Network basically was supposed to be organizations that he was funding, and then they look like on the outside, like if you were just to Google information about something, they look progressive on the outside. So that's another thing people don't realize. Like when you Google things and people say Google is free, Google is actually very costly. Even now more than ever, Google is not like a safe source for valid information. But what they were doing is
take the air out of my heart. What you talking about?
It's not like people can Google things, and now Google has this AI tool at the top, and a lot of times it's full of misinformation. And people will say, see, I Googled it and it's right there. or it has factual information, but it's stated in a way that like confirms their bias, and so they don't read any further. They don't click through the links to actually get the real information. So Google is actually very costly. There are a lot of websites online that people let's say you want to Google, people coming into the country, right? You want to Google visas, you want to Google immigration, you want to Google, and then like you get this page on how immigration impacts American citizens, or you get to this page on how immigration impacts Black America specifically. And you're reading these stats and it's like, oh my God, everybody's taking our jobs. But then you don't know, like this website, and this is a real example. They had one called Choose Black America. ChooseBlackAmerica.org was funded by one of the organizations that was a part of the Tanton Network.
Not surprised.
So if you were to go there, and I don't think it's still up, but if you were to go there, it would have all this information if you were just to Google and think you're learning something, but it's completely biased information.
So it's basically it's certain entities, companies, organizations, etc., that will pay monies into Google to make sure that their product, their entity, their information, their website is placed higher in the search engine results when you're Googling a particular subject. Is that what you're talking about?
That happens, but even without paying, that can happen. Like even if you're not paying, like you just have a website that has good search engine optimization, which means like keywords are placed, and whenever someone Googles a specific topic, your website comes up because you've done so well at doing search engine optimization. So even without paying, but yes, there are some websites that some organizations that are paying. At a reparations conference, I was showing people, like in YouTube, if you were to type in reparations in the search bar for some of the YouTube videos, on the side would look like videos about reparations, and you click on it and it takes you to, I believe, like Economic Times, and it'll be a whole article on why reparations won't work, on why reparations isn't good. And this is sponsored posts.
Yeah.
But you're searching as just a regular person, and these things will come up.
And if you don't have access to other information or other folks, if you don't know no better, you're doing your research, you grab these sites that catch your eye or are recommended to you, and then you swallow that gunk.
Yes. And then, so getting back to the Tanton Network, a lot of their websites is like this, like Numbers USA, and a bunch of different ones that talk about immigration. One of the organizations that is considered a part of the Tanton Network is Progressives for Immigration Reform, but they're not progressive. A number of different organizations have written about them. And additionally, yes, Yvette Carnell was on the board of that organization. And if you were to analyze and read through their anti-immigration arguments, it looks like they're like soft and gentle, and they just want to inform the American public about immigration. But they really are, and they really appear to be, if you to take a deep dive look, anti-immigration and a part of the Tanton Network, which one of his key quotes, if you was to Google quotes, I just told you don't focus on Google, but if you were to use Google to find a valid source, like go to a valid, reputable source, and don't just get the first thing that pops up. But he has stated multiple times about his fear of America being overrun by people of color, by people that are not European descent. And that was one of his main goals. And so yes, there is that connection there between ADOS and Progressives for Immigration Reform. They put out stuff promoting them in their newsletters and stuff like that. So there is that connection. And so to get back at why the misinformation or disinformation, another component of that is, if you are to strip us of our African ancestry and to strip us of wanting the knowledge about what that means and what's that connected to, you are to strip us from our connectedness to the global South. You are to strip us of our connections to the continent of Africa and the overall African diaspora. meaning that type of stripping, that type of a fracture disconnects us in a way that makes it harder for us to move forward globally with global movements that are supporting each other. Because now we have this fracture where, either we're saying we're not African at all, or we're saying the Africans sold us, or we're saying, a number of different things. And then they're getting their own versions. It's not just us. They're getting their own versions in the diaspora of disinformation targeting different diasporic Black groups. I've had people reach out to me in the UK saying that something very similar is happening there. It's very easy to implement disinformation on the continent. It's happening there. So we are being fed constantly lies about ourselves and lies about each other. And then we get in these digital spaces and we are either engaging in our own erasure, engaging in diaspora wars, engaging in Black voter suppression, and not really realizing that that is what we're doing. Engaging in supporting the police state without really realizing that that's what we're doing. When we say this don't concern us, this not our, people are not really understanding what's happening there. All of these different things that are occurring are interconnected. It's a fracturing us from our cultural identity, heritage, fracturing and removing us from our history and the historical frameworks that come with that, removing us from understanding and being able to analyze what is happening in a contemporary case and how that fits in a historical context, and how we are represented on a national level and on a global level. So all of those things are happening at the same time. So yes, when you see something like something ridiculous, and see, I go on TikTok and I have a kind of a following on there, but I'm not there that often. I need to be more consistent. But it can be overwhelming to see so much disinformation at one time. But please know that when you see a video where somebody is saying, I don't really think that they could bring that many people over in those old ships. Don't y'all find that weird? Like when you see those types of videos and then they have like 1 million likes, I'm kid you not, 1 million likes on those types of videos. There was another video about Martin Luther King and how cheating on Coretta and all these different things. Like all types of mis and disinformation gets promoted on these platforms. So bad actors know what to do because these are the types of subject matters that hit us the most culturally in our conversations.
And that we also did not get in school.
Exactly. So,
and lastly, on the Tanton Network, the fact that you stated that the Southern Poverty Law Center is keeping tabs in this area, they track hate group activity. Why would the Tanton Network or all of these affiliated folks be on their radar in the first place if it was not something nefarious? I guess that's my new word today, nefarious. Today's word is nefarious. Why else would they be? Why would they have an interest in in following these groups?
Because these things can lead to something much bigger, something more dangerous when it comes to pushing for anti-immigration and also the removal of birthright citizenship and so forth and so on. There was another point that I wanted to make about this, but I'm forgetting it right now. But the Tanton Network. Another thing that you could look up, anybody, when you have time, is look up the lawsuit against the University of Michigan. I can't remember the lawyer's name right now, but there were a couple of Arab American lawyers that sued the University of Michigan to get access to John Tanton's papers. Because he is the architect of what he's considered the architect of the modern anti-immigration movement in America. The things that he has written and that he has in his personal archives are of great importance to people that want to know how this developed and its potential for expansion. So what often happens with either a famous person or a writer or a poet of high stature or someone like that is they will donate their papers to a university so that it can be held for historical purposes. And another thing that they could do is say, I'm going to give y'all my personal papers to house in your research library or wherever, but you can't let it be shown to the public for 30 years. Like they can put stipulations on it like that. The argument that the lawyers made suing the University of Michigan was, well, this is a public university using public funds, and you're telling me I can't view the papers that my taxpayer dollars is preserving. And so it's a very interesting case because at the time, many libraries and research libraries kind of banded together in support of protecting the papers because they wanted to, not because they liked John Tanton, but because they wanted to keep libraries protected from this precedent, like to be able to have like a certain precedent where they can hold it. Because some donors won't donate their papers if you can't say you're not going to reveal it for a certain amount of years. But I believe that they are supposed to be allowing the public to view the papers now. I'm not exactly 100% sure about the conclusion of the case, but if you look up the case about John Tanton and Tanton papers with the University of Michigan, this is something that a lot of people are interested in. I've been contacted about this multiple times about this lawsuit against the University of Michigan concerning those papers. So when you see things online, people can think, oh, that's just ridiculous internet talk. But if you were to actually look at the comments, you'll see so many people engaged, so many people that believe it. So many people that will say, wow, I always thought there was something funny about Harriet Tubman. Like there was a TikTok that went viral where this woman was saying, and she wasn't even black, saying that African American was something Jesse Jackson made up and y'all shouldn't be calling yourself that. And people were eating it up, like hundreds of thousands of views. And those platforms, they promote it. So people keep putting out that kind of stuff. And so there's entities like actual bot forms that boost those types of things. But then there's real people that do it because they know they can make money from it. There's people that are selling our people snake oil dreams like, oh, I can help you find your indigenous ancestor papers. And then you can prove that you belong to such and such tribe and you can get land. And it's just, it's a bunch of snake oil salesmen that are out here taking advantage of people as well.
I was on John Jeter's radio show the other day on WPFW. I told him I can't say what I want to say because it's Pacifica and y'all broadcast license might get taken. I can say it here on Black Liberation Media. This is a cosmic slop of fuck shit of proportions unlike I have ever seen. This, when black folks say this don't make no sense, but it don't make no sense. But it also makes a lot of sense. As you've been telling us, this is targeted for a reason. I just went to look up something real quick when you were talking about Tanton in Michigan. Whenever I hear about birthright citizenship, about these various laws targeting the trans community, for example, all these executive orders that the orange guy put out against trans individuals, it helped me to really understand the war they have declared on trans people. And I understand that as part of their offensive to increase their birth rate, right? So whenever I hear about all of this stuff, it goes back to this book that I first heard about in 1987. That's a long time ago. It's a book called The Birth Dearth, written by Ben Wattenberg in 1987. Now I'm reading this from Wikipedia. This term refers to the declining fertility rates observed in many modern industrialized nations. It is often cited as a response to overpopulation. Countries and geographic regions that are currently experiencing declining populations include Europe, Russia, South Korea, and Spain. Populations of people of these descents in other countries, such as the United States, are also being impacted. The birth dearth. The point, well, that made me think of that. But the other thing is that when you talk about the Jesse Jackson, for example, an African American, this birth dearth, it's 1987. A lot of regurgitation of stuff we've been over a while ago. We've been over this a while ago, and it has now made a resurgence. And it's mind-boggling to me. This cosmic slop of fuck shit is mind-boggling to me. I don't know. But at any rate, I'm not going to keep, I would love to keep you longer, but I can't on this day. But, you know, we've been trying to get it together. We finally got this together. You know, I'm going to have you back on the show. Please let the audience know how they can keep up with you and the actual work that you are doing.
Yes, you can keep up with me at nbcit.org. And we also have an initiative called Protect Black History, where we send Black history books to some of these regions where folks have banned the teaching of Black history in public schools. So you can go to protectblackhistory.org and donate or sign up to receive books.
One more time, sis. One more time.
Well,
how to follow you, how to get in touch.
Oh, get in touch with me at protectblackhistory.org or nbcit.org, and our email is info@nbcit.org.
Jam, Jessica Awuyor, thank you so much for being on Rootwork today.
Thank you for having me.
My bad. Had my camera off and didn't change the avatar. No, I am not Renee, who's on Saturday. I am Tandasizwe Shimaringa, and this is Rootwork here on Black Liberation Media. I want to go really quickly. I want to pick up on that last bit of the conversation about birth, dearth, etc. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. There are people who are actually conspiracy theorists and should be called conspiracy theorists. They believe that everything is a secret whisper in a back room, an agreement made to carry out certain things. There are actual people who do that. And I'm not saying that secrets don't exist. They do. But for whatever reason, conspiracy theories take a lot of hold amongst some segments of Black people. One of my elders, I always remember what he said. He said, there's no need for conspiracy theories. They're killing us in the open. Okay. So this whole issue of the birth dearth, real quick, before we get up out of here. White folks basically ain't having no babies. That's what this is about. Everybody else in the world is having babies. White folks not having no babies. One of my guests last year, I don't think I had her on Black Liberation Media. I had her on the radio show on KPFK. Dr. Michelle Taylor, popularly known as Feminista Jones. When the ban on TikTok came out, one of the things Feminista Jones said, which I hadn't heard anyplace else, I was like, I don't know about that, because I don't know about it. I'm not a world traveler. I'm not a big brain person. I don't know. But it's stuck. I filed it back here in the back, just above the kitchen, to come back to later. She said that this whole hullabaloo who shot John over TikTok is because young people are in their phones and they're not getting married and they're not having babies. And we got to get that away from them. And I was like, And she said this earlier this year when the ban on TikTok was being heavily discussed. I was like, I don't know. I don't know. So a few days ago, let's see here. What's the date on this thing? June 11th, 2025. I get the New York Times in my inbox. I get it delivered to my inbox. And what does it say? Fertility rates are falling. Is the smartphone to blame? On the Interesting Times podcast from Opinion, Ross, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. It looks like do that. Maybe the H is silent, do tot. I don't know. Anyway, Ross speaks with the social scientist Alice Evans about the effects of our global retreat into digital solitude. Again, this is June 11th, New York Times. Fertility rates are falling. Is the smartphone to blame? So here's the opinion page. Let's see. There's the opinion page of the New York Times. Let's see. Can y'all see that? I'm not sure if I can. Let's see. Can I? Hold on. Hold on. Let me see if I can make that a little bit larger. Oh, Lord, y'all gonna make me sign in? How the iPhone drove men and women apart and what it means for the future. Okay, fine. Now, this is an opinion piece. I'm not going to do all of that right now. I'm not going to try and sign in. Real quick, let me see if I can make it larger at least. Yeah. Cookies, all that madness. Get out of here. Stop. Let's see. Are you going to let me? Okay. All right. I can see it. Okay. All right. So, how the iPhone drove men and women apart. Let's see. What would make you want to have more children? This week on Interesting Times, Ross D. speaks with Dr. Alice Evans, a social scientist who is as concerned about the global decline in fertility as Ross is. The two discuss why this isn't just a gender issue, it's a solitude issue, and whether there's a way to bring relationships back. New York Times opinion. 50 years ago, the world feared a population bomb. That's about 1975. An explosion of population growth that would yield famine, war, and disaster. We've got all of that, and it ain't got nothing to do with black folks and brown people having population, giving birth. It's because, never mind. But for most of my career, I've been trying to persuade people that actually population decline is now the greater peril. And in the last few years, the world has finally caught up with my once eccentric anxieties. We're undeniably headed toward a period of global population collapse, one that threatens to maroon today's children, mine, yours if you have them. And by the way, you really should, in a world of emptying cities and slowing economies. Hold on. Alice Evans, indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Dutat, Ross D. So you're a sociologist at King's College London, and you write a lot about and are working on a book about the key social forces shaping the decline in fertility around the world. And those include in particular the failure of men and women to relate to one another and pair off. Those issues are part of why I'm especially interested in talking to you. But before we dive into why population decline is happening, I'd like to try to quantify the issue a little bit and maybe help sound the alarm for some of our listeners who, unlike myself, haven't been obsessed with this issue for years or decades and may still assume that we're living in a world where the biggest problem is likely to be overpopulation. So when we talk about declining fertility and population decline, what do we mean? Now, this is Alice Evans. Okay, so fertility is collapsing everywhere, all at once, period. Next sentence. Perhaps with the exception of sub-Saharan Africa, where rates are still very high, but across Latin America, the Middle East, Northern Africa, all those trends are going sharply downward. All this gloom and doom in the first paragraphs of Ross D's opinion, and then we get to Alice the expert. First sentence, oh my God, population decline. Except for Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. You know, that's the media buzzword, sub-Saharan Africa, where the black folk be. Northern Africa, Northern Africa, Europe, Spain, Latin America. I wonder what could it be that these places have in common. It's not coming to me at the moment. All right. So, again, not into conspiracies. I just thought it was interesting that this article, this opinion piece in the New York Times comes out talking about, or is attempting to, the angle it's coming from, the same thing that Feminista Jones said regarding TikTok, regarding young people in particular, always on their phones, the birth dearth that white folks have been crying about, pulling out their hair about for decades, the policies of the Trump administration encouraging. Don't get it confused. Don't get it confused. The destruction of Roe v. Wade, that's so that white women can give birth. White women and white adjacent women can give birth. And if you see the rhetoric adjacent to that push, we don't give a damn what you feel. You gonna have these goddamn babies, white women. And you damn trans people, you are confusing things. We need menses and womenses to come together and make more little men's and womenses. Don't be confused. You might want to celebrate the end of Roe v. Wade because you believe black people are getting too many abortions. No, we're not. It's not for you. It ain't about you. This is about white folks. Now that's an aside to go with that last little bitty piece that Jessica and I were talking about. But yes, all of this is interrelated with Harriet Tubman, fact, fiction, or other. This is the other part. This is the other we're talking about. So yeah, just like I had to, I won't call it address, I call it giving space to the concern that a lot of black folks have around our Latino brothers and sisters, our hermanas y hermanos. I had to give space. I had to talk about this issue because yes, I damn near went over to that woman's TikTok page and cussed her out, and she needed to be cussed out. And I don't care if she made an apology. It's a half-ass apology. Somebody should still go cuss her out. But all right, I'm going to calm down. I'm going to calm down. Thank you all so much. I'm looking through your comments. Yeah, she got dragged. I got dragged, so I'm backpedaling as fast as I can. You could have at least acknowledged why you backpedaling and why you got dragged is because you said Harriet did not exist. Anyway. I also saw a little bit of discussion about photographs and AI and all this, that, and the other. I like the photograph because my interpretation of it is ancestors are pleased with these acts of resistance, acts of destruction. Other folks might not, but okay. I got 525. Let's see. Damn, what happened on TikTok? Yeah, you late. You're going to have to go back. But anyway, I don't see no. Okay. I don't see. All right, so I'm gonna get up out of here. Oh, my bad. Yeah, she did get dragged. I just left your comment all the way up there, Zen, and now I can't find it to remove it. But real quick, all of this stuff is made up. All of this stuff is made up. That's what people do. We make up things to work for us in our favor. Social construct. But anyway, you're gonna rewind you at work. It's 7 o'clock. Okay, maybe you're not. What time is it? Why are you still at work? How come you ain't off work? All right. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Tony. Who else I got to thank? Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Giovanni. And thank you, Leah. And thank you, Joe. Thank you, Tara. And thank you, Glenn, for supporting the show with your Cash App, with your Venmo. I want to thank all of you for supporting the show with your eyeballs. Thank you so much for watching, for tuning in. And please, like I said, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Rootwork, and subscribe to Black Liberation Media so that you will be informed not only when I do shows, but all of the other wonderful shows that are on this platform. Oh, your first time tuning in. You know, I saw somewhere somebody said that girl need some root work. She sure do. She need a root put on her. I might not be the one to do it though. She needs something. She needs something. Okay, so I hope you've appreciated. I hope you liked the show. I hope I did it some justice. Like, share, subscribe, share, like. Thank you so much. I'm going to put Jessica's information in the show description a little bit later on. Right now, I'm going to get out of here. I hope y'all enjoy the rest of your evening, your late afternoon. Thank you again so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you. You all take care. Stay safe. And I'm out.